Dr. Jordan?
Ready?
Yes.
I'm Carolyne Lamar Jordan. I was born in Augusta, Georgia, at home at 1659 Augusta, Georgia. My mother thought she had just had a stomach ache, but lo and behold, I came. And Dr. Russell was our physician at the time. He lived around the corner on 12th Street, so he came around and pronounced me this new baby. Now, I'm here in Augusta because my mother is buried here. My grandmother is buried here. And my father's father is buried here, P.W. Lamar. And I'm going to tell you who's here, as well as two of my sisters and my brother-in-law, Tracy Evans Williams, and of course, my mother, Willarina and Tracy. And I'll just tell you about each of the spots on the plot. In the far, I guess it's western corner, is my grandmother, who was born in Hepzibah, Georgia in 1864. And she died in 1948. And she lived with us in both houses. She lived with us all of the time because my father took care of his mother after his father died when he was 16 years old. They lived different places, but she moved with us and I grew up with her. Now, next to her is her husband, who is the first Peter Lamar, Peter William. My father called him Honor Taggart, but I think that might have been a fraternal name or something, fraternity type name. And his dates are 1861 to 1916. Peter, the gentleman in the second corner, was born to Carolyne Lamar, whose dates are March 4th, 1848 to September the 30th, 1912. She was on what is known formally as the Abbeville Plantation in Abbeville, South Carolina. And she was born to Peter Lamar. In this corner grandmother, 1887, married in Hepzibah, Georgia on March the 31st with a Reverend A.W. Lowe officiating. Taggart was a member of the United States Bethlehem Lodge number 1863 Grand United Order of Odd Fellows. In 1894, which is the most important year in my life concerning him, he worked as a lineman on the Augusta Southern Railroad, the Florida Central and Peninsula Railroad, that was Florida Central and Peninsula, the Columbia and Greenfield Railroad, and the Chicago, Columbia, and Augusta Railroads. Come on. How do I know that? Because I have right here his passes, which were like Union cards. So here's the one from the Columbia Greenfield Railroad Company, 1894, pass number 1927 to Peter Lamar Lyman. And he was with the WW telephone, and it's signed. Who published that? The Florida Central Railroad, Peninsula Railroad, was from Jacksonville and Columbia, and this is the one that says he was a lineman, also with the telephone, which is the telephone part. It's exciting to me, and I say that because we don't believe as African Americans what our people did. And if we didn't have this documentation, or the libraries and museums like the Lucy Laney libraries in the city, but also the museum, the Lucy Craft Laney Museum, which is why I'm visiting here, and those who are working on the restoration of cemeteries, I wouldn't be here today. And I'm sitting because I am getting older and I have had my own medical issues. We have, though, children who are following. We have doctors, lawyers, historians, and our daughter couldn't come because she's with a company called a group, nonprofit, Facing History and Ourselves. And it's studying Jewish families who've been neglected and African American families, including those about lynching. This was the last one. Now, this is the other important thing, which can be documented by those who are helping us do research, and that includes Mrs. Joyce Law, who's at the museum. My grandfather operated the first black-owned grocery store in Augusta, and it was known as the Working Man's Grocery Store at 1100 block of Broad Street. My father dictated all of this to me, so I have not researched this. I've been working on my grandfather, but what the young people are, those who have interns can do, is to help us find out that this is true. He wanted to be very sure, because he was a very great man of integrity, that it not be confused with Carpenter's store, because people remember the Carpenters that lasted longer. Others that were in the 1300 block. They were 1300 block. That's information for you all. But he was 11. He served as a trustee of Bethel AME Methodist Episcopal Church at Telfair and 9th Street when they laid the cornerstone at the original site. P.W. Lamar, the most important document and item that we need to search, Senior sold the lot at Gwinnett Street and Phillips to Miss Lucy Laney, founder of Haynes Institute, the year his son, P.W. Lamar, was born. 2019, died April the 9th, 6:40 a.m. working on a telegraph pole, and he is buried in Cedar Grove Cemetery right there. This research has been sent to the Pullman Porter Museum because it was about my father in Chicago, and it's going to be republished this year, and it's under copyright. That's it.
And Dr. Jordan, I know you have some plans for the area here where your ancestors were buried. What would you like to see done here at Cedar Grove?
Well, we have a conference, a family conference call of all of those people, and we have a cemetery committee. So that isn't just left up to me, but what we do need to find out is what the cost. I need to, before I leave, find out what the cost would be between the different kinds of plaques. For example, this is a monument, and the children, who are the ancestors of Tracy, will be deciding what they want to put for their father. So it may look like that. I had thought, and remember, that my grandmother had a plaque like that was marble. She had a plaque, because she had a plaque the same as the P.W. Lamar that you saw over there, the marble. But and I would come and tend the grave, but because it's been mowed and worn down, so we would put whatever we think is appropriate. I personally would like, I am on the cemetery committee, subcommittee for the group, to put something that was more historically relevant than the tall monuments or whatever. Some of them in the cemeteries in Georgia and Bartow are tall, but they're historic replicas of what would have been done. Since I don't know what, and Dad is not alive, I don't know what he would have done. I know he had a flat one like that, and when Mom died, that's what we put in. When Willarina died after her, this is what they put in. So now we need to discuss as a family, what do we think would be aesthetically beautiful as well as historically relevant. That's all. And we'll be talking about that on March the 23rd, or whatever the date is for our conference call. That's all. Is there anything else?
A little more about yourself. I mean, you are from Augusta. You graduated from Lucy Laney and just went on to...
Started at Haynes.
Okay.
And Haynes closed when I was 3rd grade. I was a close friend of Jimmy Carter, and he and I danced in the school closing play, and I was leading the school closing play. I put my materials in the capsule. In other words, I sent copies of my kindergarten card, my report cards, my Harvard degree copies, my about marriage. I got married at married at Tabernacle Baptist Church, so I think maybe I have a picture of the two of us. I was rushed. The deadline was coming. I didn't have much time, so I put maybe 10 good things and a very short biography of who I am. I left here, went to Fisk University in Memphis, in Nashville, Tennessee, and met my husband, who was a senior at the time. And we fell in love, and he went to Princeton, and I waited and wanted to get married right away as soon as I met him, because he was just a fine gentleman. And that's Lawrence Jordan. And Mother said no, and he said no. He was just a graduate student in physics. And so we waited 1960, and I got married 4 days after graduation from Fisk University, and got married at Tabernacle Baptist Church and had the family reception on the lawn at 2011 Milledgeville Road. We got in our buggy, our car that he bought from his dad, a Studebaker. What year, Dad? What year of the Studebaker? 1952? One that looks like an airplane. Drove to Princeton with all the linen that had been given as a wedding gift. They wouldn't let me take the china and the crystal I took. I took the silver. But we had silver, sterling silver and all that. And drove to Princeton. And we were too poor because he was a grad student. My mother wouldn't let him take me to the Bahamas. He took me to the park across the river, which is called, it had just integrated. And so we camped out in a tent and went on to Princeton, and we lived in the Graduate Dorm. I got a job at working in the library. He found it for me in the Princeton Library doing preliminary cataloging for French and German because I had that kind of classical education. So I hated that job after a year and a half, and I said, I need a real job, and I got a teaching job in Hightstown. I got pregnant. He said it's time for me to leave before he got his doctorate that year, but the next year he did. He said, I need to get a real job as a man to take care of my family. And so he did. We moved to Colgate University, where he taught, the first black, of course. And we had our daughter in Princeton. She's a Princeton town daughter. She's the one that does Facing History and loves this kind of thing and wanted to be on this tour. And after Colgate, he said he didn't want to stay there. I was teaching in the music department at the high school. The baby was taken care of by the pharmacist's wife, and it was wonderful, small college town. But Larry said these guys don't want to study Einstein's relativity. They want to study pharmacy and be doctors. And so I needed a better job. So he took a job, and we moved to Lexington, Massachusetts, the historic Lexington, to raise our children. And Laura and the children grew up there. I didn't have a degree other than a college degree. So I said, I want to get a degree. You have a doctorate. He got his doctorate the year after we moved. And I went to the New England Conservatory and got my master's. The New England Conservatory is also where Coretta Scott King went. And that's where, that town, she met Martin Luther King. Got my master's, took 3 years. It was very expensive music. I majored in harpsichord, and I was the teaching fellow there. I've been on the board, the alumni board. After that, I said, well, I really wanted to be a doctor. I really didn't want to be a musician. And so I applied for Harvard University, the Human Development Program. And that's where I got my doctorate in Human Development in the Graduate School of Education, because I had not taken undergraduate psychology and things that they thought. Harvard said to me, you can't come, Miss Jordan. They interview you. What makes you think that you can come to Harvard? And I said, I know how to read. They accepted me, and I sat on the admissions committee, ensuring that African American students would not be denied admissions, as you know is a now current, yesterday controversy about people paying their ways. So I did that, and I took only 3 years because I had 2 children, and I had a job. I was a tenured professor at Salem State College, which I'd worked 7 years to get. And so they said, you can't have a job. So they let me work early, part-time, get the kid off to school, come back home to pick up the young man who was the baby, and get my degree at Harvard in 3 years. Now, my sister says that it has hampered me mentally. It was very stressful. So if I'm intense in any way that Miss Lowe says, or have a certain personality, this is called the Harvard acclaimed personality. It will drive you crazy. That's all. I love it, and I will say this for Harvard, whoever is recruiting, and all the bad things that are going. It's racist, classist, and sexist, but I got a good education, and I love it.